Hello, welcome to Tuesday night's Hotline Live with Record Sport. My name is Daniel Cobb. I'm delighted as ever to be joined by Record Sport's Keith Jackson. Keith, how's it
Aye,
going?
my ears have been burning, by the way.
Good holiday.
Well, you wouldn't classify it as a holiday, would you?
What's 4
It was
days?
just 3 nights.
Three days?
It was a weekend,
That's all right for some, but it was nice
and
though.
it was lovely.
Aye.
It was sensational, and I'm so glad to be back in the driving rain and black skies. And it sounds as if I've got a bit of a head cold, which I didn't realise until I was starting to speak on this microphone. So obviously brought that back. But yeah, it was lovely, well needed.
Lovely. Well,
I
listen,
thoroughly recommend it as well. Alicante,
all
superb.
jokes aside, you were missed a bit on the Hotline Live. It's not the same without you. It's just not. There's no denying it. So it's good to have you
Oh,
back.
that's killing you to say that.
I just felt really awkward there. I was like, oh, it's better. That's that Scottish thing in it. It's nicer to say something having a dig at someone than actually
Yeah,
something nice. Aye,
stop that.
no. We're obviously into international break. Huge games coming up for Scotland. I was just saying off air,
Yeah.
I'm already nervous about these games, but potentially some good news tonight coming out of the Scotland camp.
Yeah, there was a Scotland have disappeared, and this is all part of Steve Clarke's thing. That see back in the day, we didn't really look after our players properly. I think it was everybody wants to play for the country, right? So it's not like the players were going under duress, but were they really well looked after? Not always. Sometimes there was a bit of penny pinching getting done by the SFA. Steve Clarke has asked the SFA, demanded that the SFA up their game when it comes to looking after the players. So anyway, the talking point with that is before we play Greece on Saturday night in Athens, the squad has flown out to Belek in Turkey. Um, Beautiful hotel, and they're there for a few days. Warm weather training, preparing for the game in Greece, which is just a short hop then over from Belek to Athens. The bad news being, of course, which we knew already, that Billy Gilmore hasn't made the squad, or didn't make the trip. The good news is that today Stephen Naismith confirmed they're really hopeful that Billy Gilmore will have time to get ready and be fit for the game against Denmark on Tuesday. Of course, if we can avoid defeat in Athens, then we go into this winner takes all game against Denmark, knowing that we could qualify straight to the World Cup with a victory. And just, so, I mean, it wasn't hedging his bets. Even it was quite strong. Stephen Naismith said there was an argument to say call him up anyway, so that we have him on site. But he's better being at home and seeing how this week goes to give him the best chance to be ready. And that's still a good, realistic possibility. The higher risk comes if you maybe force him into the first game when he's not 100% and damage him more. Whereas if you give him another week, then the chances of him being at a really good level to go into that last game is high. So yeah, I think there's still a good chance that he could meet up when we're back home. So I think that's a real shot in the arm, because you know what I feel about Billy Gilmore. I think Scotland are a better team when he's in the midfield. So we just need to go do a number on the Greeks, get in and out of town without suffering a defeat, and then it's all roads lead to Hampden. And just the prospect of going into that game knowing a win would qualify us directly. It's
Yeah,
you're right. You can feel the stomach starting to go a little bit. These are mega days for a country that hasn't qualified for a World Cup in this century.
that's mad. Just to go back to Billy Gilmore briefly, I don't want to overstate it too much, but I think Billy Gilmore playing or not playing could be the difference between winning and losing against Denmark. I really do. I think he's that crucial in the middle of the park. And we saw
I
that
think
in the last
he gives
international break,
us.
didn't we?
I think he just gives us that class and composure, and he can keep the ball, and it's the most important
Aye,
thing at this
aye.
level. I mean, scoring goals is obviously the most important thing, but in terms of controlling a game of football, you need to have people in the middle of the pitch that are really good technicians, can pass the ball, retain the ball, and just everything goes through them. And maybe we'll be more physical. Maybe it'll be a more physical sort of effort against the Greeks. Will so maybe And he's done this occasionally, hasn't he? He's left him out when he's felt, you know, he might miss out the midfield a little bit. We might go a bit longer. We
Yeah,
might have Lyndon Dykes and Shea Adams offering us that platform to get out, because he's talked about that and the importance of it. And in that scenario, maybe Billy Gilmore would might start on the bench. But I think against the Danes, you're going to have a proper game of football. It's going to be a
yeah.
real contest. Um, and I think, you know, we need as much talent in the starting 11 as we can get. And as I said to you, I just think we're a better Scotland team when Billy Gilmore's in it.
William in the comments, and if you're watching at home and you want to get involved, please get involved in the conversation. Let us know what you think of Scotland's chances of getting to the World Cup, and anything else that you fancy talking about. William says nothing really to be worried about. The outcome, it seems to me, is so obvious. We should get ready for the playoffs. I don't share that, Keith, to be honest. I really do think, and honestly, actually, this might be a Scottish trait as well. I hate myself for being this confident. I feel like there's something wrong being this confident, but I think we're going to do it. I really do think we're going to do it.
Yeah, well, that's always never get too ahead of yourself, you know, because look, I've been following Scotland around the place for long enough to know that just when you think that you know, things are looking up, you get a right big crack right in the spawn. Um, and you know, I'm not. Do I think we can do it? Yes. Do I think
Yeah,
we will do it? Yeah, part of me does think we will. But it's not. That's not born of anything other than the fact that we've got a really experienced manager who has qualified us for tournaments, and we've got a group of players that have built this experience over the years as well, and they're used to it. They're used to performing. They're used to going out and getting big results in big matches and key moments. Um, so, for all those reasons, Dan, I share a little bit of your optimism, but I take nothing for granted. I tell you, Greece is going to be a difficult game.
yeah, yeah,
They're
yeah.
they're going to give us even though their campaign's over and they can't qualify,
They'll
they'll
be
give
up
us a
for it.
game in Athens.
Aye, definitely.
So
That's
it's
the one. That's the one. I know Denmark are a better team than Greece, but that's the one I'm a bit more worried about. If you know what I mean. I think if we get to that game, the Denmark game, with a chance to win the group and qualify, I think we'll do it. A shootout at Hampden.
well, and could you imagine what the place is going to look and feel like? A packed Hampden, knowing what's on the line here,
Mm,
win this game of football, and you've qualified for a World Cup.
yeah,
I mean, and that's why what you don't want is for the bubble to burst in Athens, and for us to go into that game knowing the game's a bogey already. We need to get the result that keeps that game alive. And you know, honestly, the atmosphere inside Hampden, and I know people complain about Hampden, and I complain about it myself from time to time. But when it's packed and it's full of Scotland fans, and there's something on the game on the line, it can be a really noisy place. It can create a great atmosphere.
aye.
Um, and you know, how good would that be going into that game, knowing that a win would get us there? So yeah, and bear in mind, this is an old guy talking. I was at the last World Cup reporting on Scotland back in France '98, so I know how long it's been. It's a long time, and it feels as if it might be real this time. That's all I'll say at this point.
I mean, in the comments, Arlene agrees. She says the atmosphere will be amazing. Craigie says if Scotland can't beat Greece, they definitely won't beat the Danes. Although Luke Skywalker is right up for it, says we can win both. Come on, Scotland. Singing the Blues says Dan's acting like a Hearts fan with his overconfidence. Mark says Scotland are more like Celtic nowadays. Don't necessarily play well, but able to scrape out a result regardless. And Green Machine says put it all in against Greece and a home tie with the Hampden Roar. You never know. And I was going to, obviously, there's domestic stuff that I want to get your take on as well, Keith. But
Mhm.
just going back to what you're saying there about France '98, you know, you go to a lot of these games, you know, fortunate enough to, you know, that's your work. Where would this rank Scotland getting to a World Cup next a week tonight? If Scotland were to do that, that must be one of the best moments of your career, I guess, if we were to do it.
It'll be a biggie. And Steve Clarke has provided some big moments, hasn't he, over his 6 and a bit years? You know, we stopped we used to qualify for everything, Dan, back in the day.
Aye, aye.
So it wasn't a surprise getting to a World Cup because you kind of almost expected it of Scotland. And then we just fell off a cliff. And and then we stopped qualifying for the Euros as well, and it just became a bit of an ordeal. It wasn't a lot of fun. You felt at various points the players weren't really enjoying it. I mean, they're always proud to represent their country, but it became hard work at times. You looked at Kenny Miller, the period of time where he was Scotland's number 9, absolutely doing his dinger in for
Yeah.
90 minutes, but the ball was hardly getting up to him, and it was hard. And we had some decent players throughout these periods, um, but we just couldn't get the team together. I was there in Paris when McFadden scores the World Day, and these are moments you think, "Oh my God, there's something crazy happening here," and it's never materialised until Steve Clarke. Now, I think he's fortunate in many regards, because if you were ever going to get the Scotland job, now would be the time, or this period that he's been
Yeah.
in, where we've had players like Andy Robertson, who started winning caps for Scotland when he was at Hull, who now is a Champions League winning Liverpool stalwart. Um, and they've grown. John McGinn's, your Andy Robertsons, Scott McTominay came to the party a little bit later. But these guys have all grown in stature and confidence and in profile, and in terms of the level that they're performing at, where they're playing their football. So, and we've got that core of these stalwart players. There's some young, really exciting talent. And Billy Gilmore's now feels as if he's been around the scene, and he has been around the scene for a few years, but he's still only 24. And you've got Ben Gannon, Mick Ben Gannon Doak coming onto the scene. He looks as if he could be a real difference maker. So what I'm saying is, Steve Clarke's done a lot right, and there's a lot for us to be grateful about. But he's also got a bit lucky in terms of the group of players, because when Gordon Strachan, who I thought was a really good Scotland manager, but he was picking, if you get a game in the English Championship, you get a Scotland shirt. If we could find a granny for you, that's the way it worked at that time.
Yeah.
We've come on, the quality of our players has increased exponentially over that period of time. Steve Clarke, right man in the right place at the right time, hopefully. And wouldn't it be great just to get this one off our back as well now? We've qualified for a couple of tournaments, not done particularly well when we got there. Let's get to the World Cup and give it a real bash. Be great, it'd be brilliant for the whole nation. And I know that, look, we can tell, I think when we're talking about Scotland, people just say, "Oh, we want to talk about club football, we want to talk about domestic scene." But if you're a football fan and you're Scottish, and I would imagine the vast majority out there are watching this show just now fall into that category of both. Um, the idea of getting to a World Cup, it's phenomenal. It really is phenomenal. And we've had generations of kids growing up thinking, no, the World Cup's not for Scottish people. That's for Brazilians and Argentinians and Germans, and they love watching it. But generations of kids now have grown up not seeing Scotland at a World Cup. I'd love for that for Steve Clarke to lance that one last boil before he steps back. I think this will be his last campaign, whatever happens, and I think he would go down pretty much in folklore, Scottish football, as the only manager to have qualified as for 3 major tournaments. He's breaking all sorts of records. He's got a really talented group of players. He's done really well to create that group and to foster it and to let it grow. And when people were saying, "Oh, get this one in, get that one out," he was very careful. He wanted this group of players that were going to be consistent, and he's built this squad around them, key performers, and there's a brilliant sort of spirit about them.
Mhm.
As one of the guys said there, even when they're not particularly playing at their best, this group of boys somehow managed to get the job done. So
Yeah.
I think that's all. A lot of that's down to Steve Clarke's management. There's a bit of luck in there, given, as I said, the timing. This particular era of Scottish players. But yeah, if it's ever going to happen, you feel it has to be this one, don't you? And
Yeah.
then so who knows what the future holds? What Ben Doak becomes, Ben Gannon Doak, what becomes, how good Billy Gilmore gets. So they're not done. This
Yeah.
isn't the end for Scotland, but it does feel like it's the optimum moment
Yeah.
when you've got your experienced campaigners that, are they going to be still there 4 years down the line? Are they going to be at the peak of their powers? This moment here feels like it's a must take
Yeah.
situation for Scotland.
No, I completely agree. I was 9 the last time Scotland got to a World Cup. So I am that generation that's just not seen it. The Green Machine says the Tartan Army is a great spectacle marching through city squares. Tell the Yanks Scotland are coming. And Craigie says if we do qualify, if we get asked to play in Alaska because it's just as cold there as it is in Scotland, which is a good point. Mark in the comments says any truth of Robertson linked to Celtic. And I bring this up, Keith, because there's a few domestic matters I want to get your take on. This is a story that we've had online a couple of times so far this week, actually, in Record Sport Online. And actually, earlier today, I recorded the Record Celtic podcast with Chris Sutton, which is out there if you want to give it a listen. He had some thoughts on this matter as well, about Andy Robertson, 32 in March. If Celtic could get a deal done for him, he's out of contract at the end of the year. Is that a no-brainer for you, really?
Well, it's complicated, isn't it? Because in order to get a contract in front of Andy Robertson that would make sense for him to sign, other than just if it was a purely emotional pull of Celtic, you're going to have to offer him a contract which is very similar in numbers to the one that you gave to Kieran Tierney.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have the two players having the same problem of who plays left, who's your first pick. And if one of them's not first pick, you're paying him a lot of money to be sitting as a second choice left back. So I can see it. I know Andy Robertson, obviously, his background is Celtic. I know that he was he released by Celtic, wasn't he? So this is
So,
a
yeah.
nice way of squaring the circle for him at the end of his career. I also think he's been pretty shabbily treated at Liverpool this season. So
Yeah, not been treated well, yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me at all. Although I see now that finally the Arne Slot has realised that he's his best bet at left back, and seems to be putting him back into the team. I think Liverpool fans, almost to a man, would agree that should have been done weeks and weeks and weeks ago. So his situation is a fluid one at Liverpool right now, isn't it? Would it surprise you if Liverpool kind of if he kind of reclaims that jersey? Would it surprise you if Liverpool put a contract in front of him to keep him? No, it wouldn't.
No.
Would he want to sign it if he thinks he's going to get phased out? Again, there's going to be another attempt to phase him out next season. I don't know. I don't know is the answer, but I do know it'd be a difficult situation for Celtic having two left backs, both getting paid top Premier League dollar for the one position.
Yeah. And plus, I still hope and think Kieran Tierney can get back to the rampaging, blistering, explosive Kieran Tierney that we know and love. But he's not the greatest start to the season. And, as I say, Robertson getting on a wee bit, you're going to have your top two earners, both left backs, maybe slightly past their best. I just don't know if it makes the most sense, as mad as that sounds.
No, but I would, I don't know if it makes sense in terms of, as you said, both players entering into the sort of the final phase of their careers. Although, I mean, that's a bit. Kieran Tierney's only, what, 28, 29 just now?
28, aye.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's got some miles in the tank. Andy Robertson, that little bit older. I don't know. I don't think it makes. Listen, if I'm the manager and I can get the both of them into my squad and I'm all day long, I think it's a great idea. I'm not sure financially it makes a lot of sense for Celtic, that one. To as I said to you, be two of the biggest earners at the club, and they're both competing for the same position.
Yeah. In the comments, Sniper says Tierney's had too many injuries for that to happen, and Craigie says Tierney's past it. His injuries ain't helped him over the past year or so. And our old friend Gianni says, I think Robertson's moving back to get to Newton Mearn's finest Italian. We can't confirm or deny that. The other kind of Celtic stuff that I wanted to get your take on, Keith, regarding obviously the managerial search, since you've been away over the weekend, there's a new favourite at the top of the odds. I think it's still Wilfred Nancy. Knutson is in there at second as well. I mentioned the Celtic pod with Chris Sutton. He said to me today that he really hopes Martin O'Neill doesn't stay on or isn't asked to stay on because
Why?
he's that worried. He says he's that worried about O'Neill's legacy in charge of Celtic, and he doesn't make Celtic favourites for the title. Is that a worry that you would share? I mean, to put it into context, I said back to him that I really have loved seeing Martin O'Neill back. We've talked about how it's like you've jumped in a DeLorean to go 20 years ago. I think he's loved being back. I think a lot of Celtic fans would like to think there's another trophy for Martin O'Neill, maybe even another league title. I mean, where do you stand on it?
I think he started to look every day of his 73 years last week in Europe. I think that was a bit of a crash landing, wasn't it? After the dream way that it started up with back-to-back wins, knocking knocking Rangers out of the League Cup semi-final at Hampden. It was dream-like scenario stuff for Celtic and for Martin O'Neill. It felt like this walk down memory lane. It was romance etched all over it. I think the European experience last week was a sore one, and it maybe kind of unclouded a few misty eyes in terms of the reality. And,
But
and the reality is that,
sorry to jump in, Keith, but what is that? Is that on O'Neill though? I mean, Celtic just not got the great squad at the minute. I mean, I
yeah, no, but it looked, it felt to me as if he looked quite tired,
aye,
as if there was a strain on him, and there will have been.
yeah.
But I don't know. I think that probably kind of cleared a few heads, and it will have made Celtic realise it's actually, there's a duty of care here. You can't expect this guy to, go full pelt, for the next 6 or many months it is to the end of the season. European matches, I mean, it's a tiring existence
Yeah.
for a young guy. So I kind of wonder if Celtic. I've also I'm a bit in between two kind of stones with this, because there is part of me thinks how satisfying would it be for Celtic supporters to see Martin O'Neill lead his team back to Hampden for that cup final, having
Mhm.
knocked Rangers out. But that's probably the sentimentality getting the better of us. Anyone that thinks that, because really there is an onus now. Celtic, whoever the man is, identify him, have your talks, get it sorted. If there has to be a delay for whatever reason, then the delay lasts how long as the delay lasts. But I don't think it's reasonable to expect Martin O'Neill to stay on now for the full season. I think that'd be a stretch. Um, but at the same time, for old time's sakes, what a story it would be as well for Martin O'Neill to go back and pick up a trophy at Hampden before Christmas.
In the comments,
Astonishing.
William says, well, it doesn't always work out. Clubs should be employing a manager who they hope will be there 3-4 seasons to build a team, by which time he could be 77. It's too old, I'm afraid. And as Mark points out, he doesn't want O'Neill to stay purely because we need a new manager in for the January window. And that is the thing. Celtic need major surgery in the January window, if it's even possible. In January, they need, I mean, certainly, in my opinion, 2 or 3 serious incomings in January.
Yeah, but I agree with that. Of course, the last window was such a bin fire that they really need to get the recruitment spot on in a difficult point. The January sales are not easily negotiated. But I'm not sure. Look, I might be wrong here. Mark might help me out. You might help me out. Whoever is the manager, do you think it's going to make any difference to the players that Celtic recruit?
Good point.
Or do
Very
you
good
think
point.
that Celtic have got a recruitment department which will identify players and just sign them anyway
Well, we
without?
actually we had a comment last night, Keith, that I was keen to get your take on. It was written in, and look, I felt it went a wee bit far, but I'll repeat myself because I genuinely thought, I wonder what Keith's take on that is. It's from Eddie. He says, looking at Simpson, Pusey, Osmond, Trusty, even Engels getting a game again, it's fair to suggest Rodgers was quite happy sabotaging Celtic's season in order to win his petty argument with the board. I can't see any other reason why such capable players were given such limited playing time under him this season. And it did make me think, when you look at those players that have come in, maybe they really weren't his signings at all. And that's why they didn't get a look in. I don't know.
I think there'll probably be an element of that he for whatever reason decided there were players that were being signed, that he, despite what Dermot Desmond's 1 o'clock statement said, uh, that he wasn't, I don't think he was endorsing. He can't have been endorsing because he was using phrases like this is a club sign, this is kind of an investment sign.
Hmm.
And he clearly felt, rightly or wrongly, and in some cases you're seeing players that the performance level would suggest that it's slightly better than Brendan Rodgers thought they were capable of.
Hmm.
Um, but that's what I'm saying to you. I don't know if it matters who the manager is at Celtic, whether it's Martin O'Neill or Knutson or anybody.
You're
Um,
probably right.
I think the recruitment department will work at the recruitment department's own behest and own pace and identify players that it feels are appropriate signings. I'm not sure, and obviously that's what's led to the kind of fallout and the fact that Brendan Rodgers is no longer there, because he obviously believed that the manager needed to be given more of a say in the identity of the signings that were being made. I think that's clear and obvious, isn't it?
Yeah. I said there that Celtic need a lot of incomings in January. Rangers, Easy OK says, so do we, Daniel. I think this has the potential to manage January window in years. The only hope I've got is Roll can bring in a few new players in mind he can get through to Thirlwell. I bring this up, Keith, because I spoke to our good pal Scott McDermott at Dens Park on Sunday after the
Hmm.
Rangers 3-0 win over Dundee. Really good win for Rangers, 3 league wins in a row. But the one theme that kept coming up was the strikers. I mean, we all know what the stick Chermiti's been getting. Miovski came in at the weekend. Didn't look much better, to be perfectly frank. That has to be an area Rangers are looking at as well in January.
And the question is, do they have the money?
I mean, they spent. I mean,
Because
what is Miovski, Danilo, and Chermiti? You include wages in there. What is that? The best part of 15 million quid, probably.
if you include wages, it's a way north of that.
Aye, probably. Aye.
Um, so yeah, and they kind of threw the kitchen sink at it. Andrew Kavanagh and the Americans over the summer window, because it was obvious Rangers needed a rebuild. Um, what they got was an absolute monstrosity. Um,
A
and
Frankenstein.
yeah, and they're now in this position of, can they fund it? Can they go again? And all sorts of regulations, financial fair play. So I don't know is the answer. I think if Rangers are to be active, and I'm sure they will want to be active, I think they might have to raise funds from sales. And I'm not sure right now where you go to do that, who you offload. Um, and I'm certainly not sure it's a great idea to if Nico Raskin, for example, would you cash in on him now to raise money to look about? Can your midfield work without him in the shorter term? If Rangers are really ambitious, they don't, and everything they said is true, and they really believe that they're in the title race and it's not over yet, then I don't know how you could say that on the one hand and then tell your fans we're going to sell our best player um, in the January window when you
Yeah.
think that you're in the thick of a genuine title fight. So I don't know. And again, you talk about football clubs and the way that things are done these days. I'm not sure whether it's Danny Rowe, whether Russell Martin has survived, or whoever the manager would have been there. Seems very obvious to me that the recruitment department takes responsibility for the identified the identifying the players and making the signings.
Hmm.
Um, because I don't think there's a manager anywhere else in the world other than inside Kevin Thelwell's bedroom who would have thought spending £8 million on Chermiti was a good idea. I don't know what sort of manager would have endorsed that. Even if the guy comes to Scottish football and he lights it up, what are you going to get?
Yeah.
What maximum value are you going to achieve? Now, okay, we've seen in some instances, your Kieran Tierney's, um,
But that's with
Matt
Champions League,
O'Reilly's,
isn't it? Aye, that's Champions
yeah,
League.
yeah. But so you might maximum you're looking at the 20 million, 20 and a bit million. You don't spend 10 million to get there. The
Yeah.
whole plan about player recruitment is you spend 5 or 6 and you might get one of these. That Everton probably, it looks very much as if they've overpaid for Chamiti when they bought him because he couldn't get a game. And Rangers then overpaid. If you take it in context, the fee that Everton paid is not massive money for an English Premier League striker, right? What was it, 12, 15 million, something like
Aye, something like
that.
that.
Rangers to set aside somewhere between 8 and 10, that's off the scale money
That's
by
probably
Scottish standards.
the equivalent of Everton signing him for 80 million, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
70,
So,
80
so,
million.
uh, so it's absolutely on no basis did anything about that deal make sense to anybody else other than Kevin Thelwell. Unfortunately for Kevin Thelwell, because it's his kind of credibility which really depends on somebody somewhere getting some sort of tune out of Chamiti, and right now he does look a mile off it, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's been
I mean,
linked with.
Rangers right now, there isn't it. You're right to identify it as an issue. They've got Miovski, they've got Chamiti, they've got Danilo. That's a lot of wages. It's big transfer fees. And right now, if you rolled the three of them into one, you might get a decent striker.
Yeah,
Um, that's how far. And Danilo shows little signs. Good goal at Easter Road, for example. But he's not getting the run. It's definitely a problem area. And unless unless one of them suddenly finds his form and starts banging them in on a consistent basis, there's no way that Rangers are getting back into this title race or any other for the foreseeable.
yeah,
If that is the three guys, and if they continue to struggle to find any sort of form. And Majowski's been a bit of a letdown because I think people at least thought, well, the element of risk isn't as high with him because he's been there, he's done it in the Scottish League. It should come naturally, but I think it was Scott McDermott, was it? Said the other day when Majowski after the Old Firm
that
Cup
Hampden, yeah,
game, yeah, he said when Majowski came on, he was actually worse. And that's hard to fathom, isn't it? A
that's
guy
mad.
that's proved that he can do it in Scottish football. There was no track record for Chamiti, so you knew that was a gamble. You think that it was a lot less of a gamble for a lot less money to bring in the Majowski, because he's shown that he can do it, but he looks nowhere near it either.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's a problem, and that's one of the problems that you've got with recruitment, specifically at clubs like Rangers and Celtic. It's okay, as Barry Ferguson said when he was in the interim charge, you can be a good player, you can have lots of talent, but it doesn't mean that you're going to fit into this environment. You need something extra to make it in Glasgow with Celtic or Rangers. And if the recruitment department don't know what that is, what that extra X factor is, if they don't know what they're looking for, then they can only stumble across it by accident. You know what I mean? They're not going out saying, "Well, we know that this is guy's got the character," or so. It's just one accident after the next. Maybe you get lucky along the way, you stumble onto one. But
hmm
if you don't know what it is that you're looking for, then how can you possibly find it? And
yeah.
that's an issue, certainly for the Rangers recruitment department.
In the comment section, Luke Skywalker says, Dessers guaranteed you goals. All Chamiti will guarantee you is misery. John says, Thelwell thought he was getting a bargain at 8 million, which makes it even more ridiculous. Manager simply says the £8 million striker has to go first. Nick says, the problems are not the strikers, it's the middle of the park. Never replace Davis or even Lundstrom for that matter. The Belgian Messi ain't good enough. And James says, we might be forced to sell Raskin if he refuses to sign a new contract. That's exactly what he did at Standard Liège.
Again, that's another legacy issue because I think we'd said, Daniel, the optimum time to sell him would have probably been in the summer there if he's not going to
Yeah.
put pen to paper on a new contract because you're now entering into that final 18 months now.
Yep.
So the value comes down accordingly. So you actually get to a point that if you're in a title race and the Champions League is at stake, then financially you've got to make the decision: do we take a cut price bid, knowing that he's coming into the final year of his contract? Do you take a cut price bid now? Do you take an even smaller fee for him in the summer, or do you look at it and say he can add value if Rangers really believe there's something there for them to play for this season? Then maybe it makes more financial sense to keep Raskin rather than sell him. Now that you missed that window in the summer where you would have probably got the optimal bang for your buck. And you've also got to think that he very probably is going to be a major player for Belgium in next summer's World Cup. So how does that factor into your thinking as well? So I think there's quite a lot. I'm not sure that January feels the right time to cash in on Nico Raskin for a number of reasons. I think that, if he does go to the World Cup, he's still got a year. At that point, you might not get optimum numbers, but you still get a pretty healthy one
Ah,
if he
healthy.
goes and has a good World Cup. So
Just finally in Rangers, Keith, you mentioned there if they're in a title race. Do you think they are still in the title race? And secondly, I've seen Danny Rowe getting a lot of stick for celebrating a bit too much at Dens Park at the weekend. Do you think the criticism is right, or is that a wee bit kind of harsh?
well, it's each to their own, isn't it? I think the comparison has been made with Walter Smith, who wouldn't indulge in it, and that's absolutely correct to say that. But I think Danny Rowe, he's in a situation, he's firefighting in terms of he's coming into a team that's really disconnected from its own support. I think people that talk, that understand the game will talk about the importance of that connection between the fans and the team. If you can get them aligned, if you can get the energy coming from the sidelines, the side of the pitch, it can help the team. And Rangers, I think the players will probably have been negatively impacted by the support because they've been protesting about this, that, and next. What the manager out, it's been an unhappy place. And I think that what Danny Rowe was trying to do, and I think he did something similar at Sheffield Wednesday, was try and reconnect the team with the supporters. And I don't really have a problem with that. And, it's part of the culture as well. If you look at how Jurgen Klopp did it at Liverpool, it was very, very similar. Running onto the pitch, going up to the Kop, if on the back of a big victory, and he'd do this little routine where you got the fans cheering. And Danny Rowe did something really, really similar at Dens Park. Um, I can't say I've got an issue with it. Are Rangers in a title race? Well, no, at this minute in time, no. Even though the gap between them and Celtic isn't all that big, and the gap between them and Hearts is coming down a little bit, I still think, in order for Rangers to be considered as genuine title contenders, they need to be able to show and demonstrate that they can knock off 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 wins in the trot. And they're a wee bit short of that just now, aren't they?
Well, they're at three, and I think the next two is Falkirk and I think Livingston, if I'm not mistaken. I think they're do you know the only reason why I think they might still be in it is because, in my mind, they've had this disaster of a start to a season, and in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, they must be, 10, 15 points behind, but they're only five
They're
behind
dead and
Celtic.
buried.
Aye.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a bad weekend for Celtic, and it's down to two.
Yeah. And by the way, you've to factor into all that the fact that so many of Celtic's key guys
Aye.
keep tearing their hamstrings.
Aye.
Because that's not going to help. The Celtic squad was imbalanced already before they started losing some of the key components of that squad, and the key performers. Cameron Carter-Vickers, as we broke the story a few weeks ago, that he's already concerned about whether or not he's going to be fit before the end of the season. You get Alistair Johnson requiring surgery.
Not even
You
Sriracha
know,
as well.
yeah, Sriracha, and just when Sriracha starts looking like he might do something, Callum Osman comes into the team, looks like he might do something. He tears his. It's of all the things that are culminating here, is making it really difficult for Celtic.
Do you still make
Um,
Celtic favourites, Keith, to win the league?
just,
Me too. I agree.
just.
Fantastic, Mr. Fox. There you can see in the comments says Hearts will crumble. I don't think that's the case. I don't
I
think
don't
Hearts
think they'll.
are going
I
anywhere.
don't think they'll crumble. They won't. Nothing will happen that resembles what happened to Aberdeen last season, if
No.
that's what people are expecting, because they're too good. They've got too much quality, and they've got a manager that is really believable, credible, and knows his way up, down, and around this particular league of ours. So they're consistent. Look, are they going to win 8 games out of 8 uh, on a consistent basis throughout the course of the season? Well, they just might. But they won't flop. They won't, they won't start scattering points all over the place willy-nilly. And they've got themselves what they wanted, which is a right good start. And now they just need to add to it. And I think probably the international break has come around at a good moment for Hearts, because they can just take a breather, look back at what they've achieved so far, and then start setting their next set of targets for what they want to achieve. Over the coming weeks, over the festive period into January, where they want to be, and they just need to concentrate. And it is, I know it's an old cliche, but it really is in their case. They can't look any further than the next game ahead. They've just got to try and keep on winning as many of them as they possibly can, and hope that the form doesn't drop off. But I don't suspect that it will.
No,
I
I
think
agree.
that if Rangers were to catch Hearts, I think that would be almost miraculous given the state that they've been in. But it's still a big job for Celtic to catch them and reel them in as well.
Yeah.
But I think at this minute in time, I would still think that that's more likely than Hearts managing to press on the afterburners and establish maintain the lead, or make it bigger at the top. But Celtic have got the work cut out. It's not. It's a far from obvious bet, that one now, isn't it?
Yeah. Alan says, wait until Hearts start getting big injuries, then we'll see if they've got the cojones to handle it.
Well, they've got a big squad and they've got a lot of options, and
Yeah.
it's well balanced. So they're probably in a better position to handle injuries than Celtic right now.
Fantastic. Mr. Fox says we'll come back at the end of the season to see what they've achieved. And perfect note to end it on. Mark says whatever happens, it will be box office. It will indeed.
Correct, Mark.
And we'll be there to cover it all on Record Sports Hotline Live. But I think for tonight, that brings us to the end. Thank you so much for all your comments as ever. Massively appreciated. We'll be back to do it all again at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Keith, it's always a pleasure. Lovely to have you back.
Glad to be back, Daniel.
Absolutely wonderful. We hope you can join Keith and I tomorrow. Thanks for watching.